All right, today's daf is daf kuf tes. We're going to begin by the Mishnah on daf kuf ches on base. The Mishnah, heichon pikteni. The owner asks a shamer, "Where is my pikadon? Where's my deposit?" So Amar Loi, and the shamer said to him, "Oh, but I lost your deposit." So now the owner says, "Mashbi'acha ani, I'm making you swear, make a shvua. I'm making a shvua to you that the taka got lost." V'amar omin, and now the shamer said omin. He's accepting the shvua. And then witnesses testified that the shamer actually consumed the pikadon. He's a liar. He says, "Obad," and the guy says, "Swear to me that it was lost." And he found, and Adam says, the guy's lying, he really ate it. So the halach is mishalim kenen. He has to pay the principal. If the shamer admitted on his own that he had taken a shuas shav, a false oath, from a cat, mishalim kenen, he has to pay the principal and the additional 1/5 payment, and he has to bring a carbon asham. That's the first case. So, again, he says, "Where's my pikadon?" He says, "I lost the pikadon." So he says, "Swear to me that you lost the pikadon." And he says, "Amin." And then Eden testified that he really consumed the pikadon, so he only has to pay the keren. If he admits on his own, he has to pay the keren chemish and asham. Okay, next case of the Mishnah. Heichon pikteni, if the owner asks the shamer, "Where is my deposit?" So Amar Loi, the shamer says to him, "Nignav, it was stolen." So he says, "Swear that it got stolen." He says, "Amen." And now Adam testified that the shamer, that he's the one who stole it. He has to pay kefil. Why? Because when does kefil occur? Kefil occurs when the guy stole it. Here the first case was about Aveda, and he was lying and it got avad, so he has to pay the keren. In the second case, when he stole it, so then he has to be careful. However, next case is in the Mishnah, in the case of a person who robs his father, and the father demands that he return the stolen item. And he makes a shvua to his father that he did not rob him. But and then the father dies, and then what happened? The son admits that he robbed and took a shvua shav. So now he has to return the principal, and he has to give an additional 1/5 payment to his father's yershim, of which he is either one of several or the only one. So what should he do? So he stole from his father. His father made him, and he swore to his father that he didn't steal it. Then the father died, and he was lying. So now, who does he pay the keren chemish? He has to pay the principal and the additional 1/5 payment to his father's sons or his brothers, and he has to bring a carbon asham. Right, and what's the words? And he doesn't get to keep his own share. If he does not want to forfeit his share, or he does not have sufficient funds to pay the other yershim while forfeiting his share, he borrows money in the amount of the value of the stolen item, and the creditors come and are repaid in part from the share in the stolen item. In the case of a person says to his son in a shvua, it's forbidden like an offering, and for that reason you may not derive benefit from my property. So if the father dies, then Yerushalayim, the son inherits from him. Why? Because it's no longer the father's property after he dies. The Mishnah continues, the father stated his shvua, that his son may not derive benefit from his property in his life and in his death. So then the halach is, if the father then dies, lo Yerushalayim, he does not inherit from him. As is usher, as the prohibition is still in effect. So what happens? Instead of taking his Yerusha, he returns his portion in the estate to his sons or to his brothers. And if he does not have sufficient funds, then he borrows money in the amount of the value of his share of the Yerusha, and the creditors come and are repaid from his share. Okay, now with the words halacha written in the Mishnah that one who robs his father pays the principal, and additional chemish his father's yershim, Amar Yosef says, "Va'afilu la'arnok yishal tzedakah." One may even put this money in a and a tzedakah purse if he so chooses. Amar Rav Papa says, gezel abi. And when giving the money, he must say, this is what was robbed from my father. So the Gemara now questions the Mishnah's ruling that when one robs his father, he has to return the stolen item to others, even if he is the only Yiddish. Why does he have to do this? Let him forgive the chayv to himself as a Yiddish, to whom payment is due. So he's basically he's forgiving the money. We learned in the Mishnah that in the case of a robber who took a shav claiming to be innocent and later admitted his liability, if the owner forgave him concerning the principal but did not forgive him concerning the additional 1/5 payment, he need not pursue him to repay the remaining chayv. So what do we see from this klal? The principal is subject to forgiveness. So why doesn't he forgive the obligation to himself? So Rabbi Yechon says, like Kasha, this is not a Shiloh. The Mishnah is in according to the opinion of Rabbi Yisaglili, who says that the obligation can be meichel, can be forgiven. Well, the Mishnah ruling that a son who robbed his father and is his sole Yiddish cannot forgive the obligation himself. This is according to Rabbi Akiva, who holds that the obligation cannot be forgiven. Rabbi Yechon explains. We learned that a Raisa, in regards to the pasuk, to one who steals from the one person who, the pasuk states, with regards to a person who steals from one who then died, if the man has no person to whom he could pay the restitution, so what happens? The halacha is that it goes to the Kohenim. Is there any person who has no redeemers? Every yid is a yiddish from Avram Yitzchak Yankiv. So every yid has relatives to inherit him. Rather, pasuk speaking about a robbery of a convert who never married or had children as a yid, and in that case is no longer legally related to his Gentile family. He has no yershim. In this situation, the Torah instructs the one who robbed from a now deceased convert to return the stolen item to a kohen. Brisa continues, in case of one who robbed a ger, and took false oath to him, saying that he did not rob him, and then he heard that the ger died, and he was bringing his money, in other words, for the principal, and the additional 1/5. His guilt offering up to Yerushalayim to pay his chayv to the kohen and sacrifice his korban. And he counted the same convert who really didn't die. And instead of having the robber pay the money right away, the ger established it as a loan for the robber. So he says, yes, you owe me money, but I'm making a loan for you. And then and then the ger died. So now, leaving his property, hefker is no yershim. So the halacha is like this: zoch halab b'mashabiyadol. This robber acquires all that is in his possession, because now it's a loan, not money to pay back the theft. These are the words of Rabbi Yisaglili. Rabbi Akiva says, the robber has no takana until he will remove the stolen item from his possession. So now Rabbi Yechon explains the respective shittas. According to Rabbi Yisaglili, there's no difference if the one whom payment is due forgives the return of a stolen item to himself, such as the case of the ger who died, or in the case of the Mishnah where a son robbed the father and then he died, and there's no difference if he forgives the return of a stolen item to others. In either case, matzi mochel, he can forgive payment. Well, Rabbi Akiva, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, there's no difference to the one whom payment is due forgiveness forgives the return of a stolen item to others, and there's no difference if he forgives the return of a stolen item to himself. Allah is matzi mochel. In either case, he cannot forgive payment. So now Rabbi Yechon continues, Rabbi Yechon, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yisaglili, the same is true, the halacha would also be that no chiyuv would remain in the case of a ger, even had he not established the robbery as a loan. And the fact that the Brisa teaches a case that he established it as a loan for the robber is to tell us the straight of Rabbi Akiva. Even in the case that he established it as a loan, in which case it could be considered as though the robber had returned the stolen item and now has a standard regular chayv. The robber has no remedy until he will remove the stolen item from his possession, so as not to benefit from the act of robbery. Maskal Rabbi says, if this is so, then Rabbi Lili, so that according to the opinion of Rabbi Lili, that the Mishnah, which is mashma that one can forgive the principal payment of robbery, teach us instead that the robbery victim can forgive the obligation to himself, and the more so, one can forgive the obligation to others. And Rabbi Akiva, and according to Rabbi Akiva, which Rabbi Yechon explains to be the opinion stated in the Mishnah here, let it teach us that one can forgive the obligation to others, and it would be understood all the more so with regards to the robber that he cannot forgive the obligation to himself. Rather, Rav Shisha says, both the Mishnah and this Mishnah are both in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Lili. When Rabbi Lili is saying that one can forgive the return of stolen item, he meant specifically forgiving the obligation to others. But he cannot forgive the obligation to himself. So the Gemara asks, if so, why did this one who robbed a ger, acquire all that is in his possession? Because the ger established it as a loan for him, and is no longer considered stolen properly, but a standard loan chayv. Rabbi says, Rabbi Akiva. This Mishnah and the Mishnah are both in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Why did Rabbi Akiva say he cannot forgive the return of a stolen item? That he meant specifically forgiving the obligation is to himself, as in the case of a ger. But in the case of others, then he could forgive. So the Mara now questions Rabbi's explanation. It's mashma that Rabbi Lili holds. He holds that he can forgive the return of a stolen item even to himself. So now, if so, payment for robbery of a ger who dies without yershim, about which the Teda says goes to Kain, how can these circumstances, if in every case where one robs a ger and the ger dies, the robber can forgive the return of the item to himself? So you'll never find a case of a gezal ger that has to give to Kain. So Rabbi says, what are we dealing with over here? The case where one robbed a ger and took an oath that he did not rob it. And then the ger died. And the robber admitted his false oath after the ger died. Because at the time that he admitted it to him, the time that he admitted it to the name, in other words, Hashem, acquired the principal and additional chaymish and gave it to the kohanim. Once the right to the payment is transferred to the kohanim, the robber can no longer forgive it. If he admitted his false oath while the ger was still alive and then the convert died, the convert can forgive the obligation to himself since he already took ownership of it. With regards to payment of a robbery of a female convert, what's the halacha? The Torah says a man, indicating that applies to a male ger, but not to a woman. In other words, a female convert, if she dies after being robbed, payment is not given to the kohanim. Or perhaps the Torah is just giving a normal circumstance of how the case is, but it doesn't exclude a female. All related of Aaron the Ravina. So the Aaron tells the Ravina, Tashma, I'll bring a raya. The Torah says this. Ish, the Torah says Ish, in the other Isha. Isha Menai Kisha Emra Hamushav. The Torah says that is made, Harikan Shnayim. It means two. So it means a female and a male. Im Kematam Lemer Ish. So why does the Torah say Ish? Because Ish at the Torah last after of Mishkel in the Lav. Because Dafka man, you need to investigate concerning him to determine if he has any Gelim or not. Kotin, yeah, that's our last love. But But to a ger who's a minor, you don't need to investigate concerning him. You do a shein le gelim. It's known that he has no gelim, since as a ger he has no, as a ger katan, doesn't have any birth by his family, and as a minor, he does not have any children. Okay, now with regards to the payment of the kainim in the case of one who robbed a ger, who then died without yershim, Tananabano said like this: La Hashem Akain, Torah says, shall be for the kain, Kano Hashem, teaching that the name Hashem acquired it when the son of Lakin should be Mishmar. And Hashem gave it to the kain who was at that priestly watch. Or perhaps it's not the case. Rather, he may give it to any kain that he wishes. When he says, besides the ram of atonement, whereby atonement shall be made for him, there is teaching us of the giving of the kain who is on the priestly watch. So just as a ram that the robber brings is given only to a kain on duty who sacrifices it, so to the money it's also given only to the kain on mishmar. In the case for one who robs the ger, the person who robs the ger was a kain. So where do we know that he can't say, since the payment is usually removed from the robber and given to the kain, and it's now in my possession, so let it just be mine. But and there's logical, makes sense to say this. This is the kain has the right to acquire the payment belonging to others who stole from the ger. Then he's a real crook, this guy. And with regard to payment belonging to himself, which is already in his possession, is it not all the more so that he should keep it? Bryce says, Rav Nasa says this in different wording. And just with regards to a matter in which the kohen has no portion until it enters his possession, for example, let's say trumo, which can be given to any kohen. Once it enters his possession, another kohen cannot remove it from his possession. So with regards to a matter which a kohen has a portion even before it enters his possession, example, in a stolen item from a ger, in which he has a portion as one of the kohenim of the mishmar, isn't logical that another kohen cannot remove it from his possession once in his possession. So the Rabbi says, no. If he said this concerning a matter in which a kohen has no portion, in other words, for the reason why once it enters his possession, another kohen cannot remove it from his possession, then I could say that just as there's no portion in it, so too others have no portion in it. Tamer begazel, you're going to say this in regards to robbing a ger, just as the kohen who robbed him has a portion in it, as one of the kohenim of the mishmar, so too other kohenim on that mishmar have a portion in it. Rather, the halacha is that the item he stole is removed from his possession, and is distributed to all the kohenim, all his brothers who are the kohenim. So the Gemara says, but the pasuk says, "V'ish is kadesha v'yu." Every man his holy things shall be his. This is mashma that a kohen is not required to give to the other kohenim the offerings he is the sacrifices. So just as he has the right to the flesh of the ashram that brings to mimachaper the robber robbing the ger, shouldn't he also have the right to the payment? So my answer is, we're talking about a case where the kohen was a tummy. It's unfit to bring a carbon ashram, and therefore does not have the right to the flesh of the carbon. In this case, he will not be able to keep the payment for himself. If we're talking about a kohen tummy, so he doesn't really have a portion in it. Rather, I see the kohen is the chuza, maybe of kohen, which if hected, if you have consecrated and then redeemed by others, is not referred to as the original owner by Yevel, but is given to the kohen, as the Bryce will explain. The Tani will like this. Teda says achuzasa. The Torah says his inheritance. Matam b'leimer. What does it say? Nine the sada yitzin the kohen b'Yevel. From where? What is the meaning of the possessions? From where do we know that with regards to a field that goes out to the kohen in the Yevel, and one of the kohenim redeemed him before Yevel, and he redeemed it for one of the Kenim. So where do we go? You should not say, how be using the Kenim since anyways goes out to the Kenim and it's in my possession, it should be mine. It didn't make sense. Why? Because the same Svara, if I could get others, for sure I can get to what's in my possession. That's what the pasuk says. As a field dedicated, the possession thereof shall be the kain. Possession of his ancestors is his, but the field that he redeemed is not his house. So it's removed from his possession and is distributed to all of his brothers, the kainim. But we learned that in Brisa. So now the Gemara records another Brisa concerning the rights of a kain for offerings of the karbonis. From where do we know about kain? From where do we know that a kain may come and sacrifice his offerings at the time, at any hour that he wishes? He does not have to wait for the kain's mishmar to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. His mishmar. So now the kain shabal makro karbonis b'chol yishir. And he comes with all the desire of his soul, then he shall minister. And from where do we know that the performance of service high belongs to him? Every man, Kadesha, it should be his. Okay, it said also, if the kain was blemished, he gives his offering to another kain that's on the same mishmar. The performance of the service and his hides belong to him. If he was an old or sick, so he cannot perform the service or eat from the carbon, he gives any kain he wishes to sacrifice, even if that kain is not on that mishmar. The performance of his service and his hides are given to the members of the priestly watch. A little more. So the words of the height, we'll stop here.